Well, Gina McCarthy currently serves in the Biden administration as the first ever White House National Climate Advisor. Previously, she held the position as administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency under President Obama. National Climate Advisor McCarthy, welcome to the Climate Pod.
Hey, thanks so much. It's great to be here with you.
Well, it's such an honor to have you on the show to talk about what just happened. On June 6th, President Biden invoked the Defense Production Act to drive domestic manufacturing of clean energy technologies. How will this executive action increase the production of clean energy right here in America?
Oh, it's going to make a huge difference in terms of how quickly we can accelerate and deploy clean energy in this country, in particular in solar. Solar is really going to be one of the staples of the new clean energy future. And the president wanted to cement that. Look, from day one, President Biden said, climate change is an existential challenge. We are tackling it. And so from day one, he created this climate policy office so that we could work with 20 federal agencies to make sure that everyone was thinking about our future, about our health, about our security and stability, and actually working together on clean energy. And solar manufacturing is an important part of that puzzle. So the president did take action. He took 3 big steps just a short time ago to make sure that solar manufacturing, the panels that we needed, would be able to get into this country, and that we would be able to use the Defense Production Act to develop the kind of budget plan that we need to advance domestic manufacturing in our country, and that we would use the power of the federal government to make sure that that demand got sparked immediately. And the exciting thing is, Ty, is that was a great day to show that we could move solar, but it also was about heat pumps. And the president has also been about electric vehicles and moving those into the future today. And he's also been about offshore wind. So you're really looking at a president that is just totally committed to looking at how the United States can begin to turn the corner from this pandemic, be hopeful again, grab manufacturing jobs, push union made in America products, and figure out how we do that by making sure that environmental justice communities get a significant piece of the investment, because for far too long they've been disinvested in. So as you can tell, I'm pretty excited to be where I am right now. I'm pretty excited about what the president did. But honestly, he just keeps moving forward. We know that very recently we created some new standards for electric vehicle charging stations, because we are going to launch a 500,000 chargers across the United States to make sure that electric vehicles, you can grab one, it can be affordable to you, you can cross the United States of America, you can save money, get where you want to go, whether you're in a city or a rural community. And so it's just an exciting moment in time, I think, for all of us who have been trying to figure out how to tackle this climate crisis and do it in a way that's really going to be beneficial to all of us today, not just help with our kids' future.
Yeah, you mentioned how the federal government can help jumpstart that demand. So how will the federal procurement standards that President Biden put in place impact solar production?
Well, the procurement standards are basically going to require that the federal government puts master purchase agreements together so that we can negotiate the best prices for solar panels and make them cost effective, and that states and cities can actually build off those contracts and join in the fund, because everybody wants solar energy. They may not talk about it in many of the states, but they're buying it because it's inexpensive, because it helps to provide stability and resilience into the energy system that we have. And so those master contracts are going to provide really inexpensive ways to buy in bulk. And this 24-month bridge that the president has put in place is going to make sure that we get solar panels into our country now from Southeast Asian countries, not from China, because that's heavily tariffed, because of the challenges that they have with forced labor. But in these other countries, we're going to make sure we can get them in. We can continue to spark and move forward on solar so that we can triple the amount of solar in just this short period of time with the president at the helm. And so we're excited about using that. And we're going to make sure that we continue with not just this bridge, but also to make sure that we're looking at things like heat pumps, things like just insulation, anything that we can do to provide American consumers with less expensive ways to generate energy. And that really almost always means clean energy. And that's going to be, so I think, the best answer for all of us. And on the whole, the way in which President Biden wants our economy to grow, because he knows that we're being held hostage by fossil fuel prices that we haven't seen for many years. And we can't allow ourselves to be vulnerable to people like Putin, who are controlling the oil and gas prices, or even to other countries who are doing posing similar challenges. So we have to figure this out, and we have to shift to clean energy, and we have to do it now.
You talked a little bit about environmental justice at the beginning, and obviously EJ investments were a big part of President Biden's promise to America. So how does this action advance environmental justice?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways in which this really works, because, climate change really impacts most the communities that are already inundated with pollution. And that is all the environmental justice communities. That's low-income communities, communities of color that have been disinvested in, and they're so exposed to traditional pollutants. And they also end up being the ones most at risk in a changing climate, because you're talking about housing that's not stable, housing that's not efficient, less air conditioning to deal with the heat stress we have. Many of these communities get flooded. And so part of the bipartisan infrastructure law that the president designed and was shepherded through Congress to get it passed, part of that is to make sure that we are investing in our infrastructure again, but doing it in a way that provides at least 40% of the benefits of these investments to those environmental justice communities that really need it most. They can make a dollar go further than anyone else because they are in such desperate need of housing that is resilient, that can stand up to the challenges that we're facing in climate now. We see the wildfires that are happening. It's providing resources to our Forest Service and to the Department of the Interior so that we can protect those communities that are at risk, make sure we put those fires out. We're talking even about our programs that used to just be about increasing ability for heat to be provided to low-income communities. Now we're opening it up so that air conditioning can be provided to low-income communities. These are the changes in life that we're seeing that we know are inevitable in a changing climate. But what we shouldn't accept as inevitable is that certain communities get left behind, certain communities fail to be invested in, and that the health of those communities continue to be in jeopardy. We cannot let that happen. The bipartisan infrastructure law was $1.2 trillion. It's time to invest in ourselves, especially those most vulnerable. And that's what President Biden has said from day one. He got elected because he recognized environmental justice as an issue. He got elected because he recognized climate change as the threat of our lives. And we knew, and we have confidence, that he's going to continue to push forward with bold actions to address both of these issues.
Yeah, you can tell. I mean, obviously, voters care so much about this. We hear all the time from voters who are extremely climate concerned. And I want to go back to this decision because, as you can imagine, on the Climate Pod, we talk a lot about executive action. Yeah. We talk a lot about policy. We don't really know much at all about the Defense Production Act. So why use the Defense Production Act? How does this actually work?
Yeah, the Defense Production Act is a pot of resources. It's an investment fund that generally is managed out of the Department of Defense, and it provides an opportunity to do two things: have money readily available to address what we understand to be a national security issue, something that impacts all of us. And that's what the challenge with solar was. We were losing our ability to keep moving forward to accelerate clean energy at the pace that we know climate demands. And this is going to increasingly put us at risk. And so the Defense Production Act, in the instance of solar, is about making sure that both the Department of Energy, who's taking the lead on this, works with the Department of Defense, and they establish a budgetary process to be able to allow us to advance domestic manufacturing of solar products right here in the United States. And, you know, Brock, you may be surprised to know that this is the second time in our clean energy challenges that the president has called on the Defense Production Act, because he also called on it just maybe a couple of months ago, when we realized that critical minerals needed to be produced and extracted in the United States so that we could have batteries and other critical clean energy technologies available. So as we advance solar, we can capture the production of that energy and store it in batteries and use it to make sure that there's always resiliency in the energy system. And that means we called on the Department of Defense to look at how we would make sure that these minerals could be extracted, how we could work with the private sector to move this forward. And one of the things we've found is that as the president has stood up and been so clear about the challenge and so aggressive in using bold steps like the Defense Production Act, the private sector is noticing this stuff. You know, they're standing up. In solar and batteries alone, we're talking about billions of dollars in investments that are being added by the private sector to really start manufacturing domestically in the United States again. That means good paying union jobs. Look at in the electric vehicle sector, they are all in. They know that the future is electric, and they're going to grab it right here in the United States. Over $100 billion has already been invested and promised in the United States for domestic manufacturing of EVs themselves with union labor. We're talking about batteries that go into electric vehicles being advanced. We're even talking about battery recycling. So the critical minerals in these batteries at their end of their life can be recycled again. So we are all in at looking at the entire supply chain and making sure that the United States can win the 21st century clean energy economy for our benefit.
You know, earlier you mentioned Vladimir Putin, and we, think about the kind of power that dictators and authoritarian governments have in heavy oil and gas states around the globe. And this invasion of Ukraine has really focused the global energy conversation. It's been a huge disruption to the global energy market. Did that play a role in the president's decision to invoke the Defense Production Act?
Absolutely, it did. You know, the president is fully aware that as long as you depend on energy that is controlled by another country, then you really can't truly have energy security in this country. So he has been very clear that clean energy is the answer to these issues as we move forward. And while it's not a switch where you can move to 100 right away, you have to figure out how you keep growing jobs, growing the economy in this direction. He's going to accelerate it as fast as he can. And that's why you saw when he was calling on the Defense Production Act, because Putin has not just impacted our ability to have cost-effective energy here. He has basically created a system that's made it abundantly clear that despots like him will use whatever lever they have available to get their ability to have an economy that's stronger than other countries. We cannot let that happen. The United States has been the leader in the world, and we intend to stay that way. And so so part of the acknowledgement is that two things are happening here. We are seeing very high energy prices because that energy is being controlled elsewhere and our access to it is being controlled elsewhere. But secondly, we see the fossil fuel companies, the refineries. Many of them are raising prices higher than they need to be and telling their investors that this is a whirlwind for their investors instead of going as low a cost as they can so that our consumers don't get punished by investing more, giving more money back to their investors. So both of those issues are enormously challenging. The fossil fuel companies need to figure out how to adapt to clean energy as they move forward. In the meantime, they better not continue to soak the American public with excess charges while we try to struggle through this economic challenge that isn't just in the United States of America, but it's across the world.
Yeah, and we know that why that is such an important thing to be able to invest in domestic clean energy production, because that makes us independent from foreign energy markets. And that is so valuable, but it's also incredibly helpful at helping us achieve the decarbonization goals that President Biden promised during his campaign.
That's right.
He promised to get America on track to slash emissions by 50% of 2005 levels by the end of this decade. But according to a recent study, American emissions are projected to decrease by just 28% by 2030. So given those stats, how does the administration feel it has done thus far in meeting its climate goals?
Well, there's always going to be challenges, as we see. We've spent a lot of time in the administration, making up for lost time, redoing our regulations in standards that are meaningful and protective. We have taken great steps to look at what creativity we can bring to the table. That's why the president is not being shy about the use of every tool in his toolbox. And so what we see now is we have an offshore wind industry that is simply booming. We are seeing offshore wind all up and down the Atlantic coast, over in the Pacific. We continue to move that forward in a way that, frankly, nobody anticipated, because we're working hard to make sure that it can be permitted. We're working hard to make sure our fishing industry is properly compensated, and we're moving forward with the kind of speed that the private sector demands, and the investment is there. The same with solar. We are really looking to triple the amount of solar energy being produced in our country by 2024 from the time the president came into office. That's significant. So we're looking at every opportunity we have. But I will say that, it's not a switch that where it goes from 0 to 100. There's always challenges. But frankly, this president isn't afraid of the challenge. The only thing that concerns him is whether or not we can do it fast enough. And that's the challenge for all of us. So I think you're right. We have been struggling, especially through the prior administration, because we lost a lot of momentum. That's when we lost our domestic manufacturing, solar manufacturing. We have to build that back. But the one thing we won't ever follow that with, but it takes time. We don't have time. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to move fast, and we're going to move sure. And a lot of this, I think people will see that change is happening, and that change is happening in a way that grows jobs instead of threatens them, in a way that reduces energy costs for the consumers so they can live better lives and know that they can have a healthy future and a safe future for their kids. So we're going to keep being positive. We're going to keep being aggressive, and nothing is going to slow us down, no matter what hurdles get tossed in our way, because we don't have time for that. And we're not going to settle for slow progress. We have to go for it all.
Well, we will get so much progress if Congress is able to pass a reconciliation bill and we implement so many of the great things in the Build Back Better Act. Even the statement released on June 6th called on Congress to act to implement tax breaks and more investments in clean energy and climate solutions do we desperately need? Does the administration believe that Build Back Better in any form will be passed before the midterms?
Well, that certainly is our goal, and there's some really important conversations going on the Hill, and we have every confidence that things will move forward. Just how robust and how broad it is, we can't know at this point, but we know the conversations are good. We know people are saying positive things. I think you recognize that the president did and does, and every time he talk about the need to move this reconciliation forward. We want to do it this month, if we can. And so we'll keep supporting the efforts on the conversations on the Hill, but we need some things that are vitally important. We need tax credits to advance manufacturing. We need tax credits to make sure that everybody, not just privileged people, can afford electric vehicles, because that is the future. We want everyone to have access to it. We'd love some resources for our Civilian Climate Corps, because getting young people engaged in climate efforts and conservation is terrific. It helps to prepare them for the challenge of the future and get engaged and positive about what we can all do together. So we have some vital components of the reconciliation discussions that we really want to see happen, which is why the president doesn't want anyone to forget just how committed he is on reconciliation and how important he knows this is to succeed on.
If Congress isn't able to act fast enough, whether through reconciliation or some other process, what other executive actions is President Biden prepared to take in order to get the United States back on track to reduce those emissions by 50% as promised?
Well, I did say that it's never easy and there's always challenges. So I'm going to continue to think positive about reconciliation. But rest assured, we understand that climate change is not just a planetary problem, it's a health problem. We are talking about carbon emissions that actually damage people's health. We are talking about carbon emissions that are changing the climate so dramatically. And I think people across the country will be feeling it soon, because we have some significant heat stress coming out. So people need to take care of themselves and hydrate, get into air conditioning centers if they don't have anything, that ability in their homes. But we also know that if we don't get what we need to move forward, we do have executive authority. We know that. We used that during the Obama administration to get moving, and we did better than we ever thought we would, but we still have to accelerate. So we have a package of actions that we will be rolling out, and we'll make sure that they move the needle as fast as we can. Do we need reconciliation? Yes. Will it be fundamental to making that acceleration that we want? Absolutely. So we're hoping we get that now, and we're working towards it, but we're not going to depend on only that. We certainly have other tools in our toolbox, and we will use each and every one of them.
Climate activists, climate concerned voters, and you're used to this, having served in President Obama's administration and President Biden's administration. Yeah. They don't just want clean energy. They want the approval of new oil and gas leases stopped. They want even the revoking federal permits of some pipelines approved during the Trump administration. With this Defense Production Act and the possibility of major spending from reconciliation, will new fossil fuel infrastructure still be necessary?
Well, that is a debate that's happening right now, and you're absolutely right. There were pipelines that were already permitted that ended up being constructed. There was little we can do about that, but the president made a commitment to get off of oil and gas drilling in this country on public lands, and he expects to keep that. In the meantime, we're in an emergency situation with gas prices as high as they are, but that should not diminish and does not diminish this president's commitment to move forward with the promises he made during the campaign. So we know we have to keep people healthy, keep them getting to work, build our opportunity to reduce the costly energy that's not only raising a gas prices and heating prices here, but also the energy that's creating pollution that impacts so many communities today. So there are a multitude of benefits and a multitude of cost savings that come with clean energy today. So we have to stop thinking about this as a cost and start talking about it as our investment in ourselves, in our communities, in our families, and virtually in our future. And so I cannot imagine that we are not going to use every tool in our toolbox to really get the kind of change that we know that we have to deliver for our children. There's just no time to waste, and there's no second thought that we should be given to this. We're smart enough to know how to do it. We have technologies that we've never had before. Let's just get moving.
Well, one thing that does concern us as a potential hurdle to progress is the Supreme Court, the current makeup of the Supreme Court. You served as administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency when the Clean Power Plan was created under President Obama. After it was challenged by several state attorneys general, the Supreme Court recently heard arguments for restricting the EPA's ability to regulate greenhouse gases. In your opinion, how important is this ruling for America's ability to really meet its climate goals and reduce the impacts of further warming?
Well, there's two things to keep in mind here, Ty. You're right. I was the EPA administrator when we moved forward with the Clean Power Plan, which was our first, opportunity to really set standards for the utilities on emissions of greenhouse gases in the energy sector. And, it was a big deal. We thought we were pushing really hard. And what we found, even though the rule actually never went into effect because of these legal challenges, it set a stage that for the electricity system to actually sit up and realize that there were other choices available than what they were making. And we ended up meeting what we thought were going to be 2030 goals and within 5 years of putting that rule out. So it made a difference. And that's I think the signal that this president is sending. He's not waffling on these issues. He's hitting them hard, and he's sending the private sector the kind of notice that they need to know where the world is moving forward. And we have, like, the Electric Edison Institute pushing with us to get reconciliation moving. They know that electric vehicles are the future. They love the charging stations. Things are changing. But you're right, we cannot, everybody is watching what the Supreme Court is doing on so many basic critical issues that are important to all of us. You don't have to be a young person to recognize the risks that the Supreme Court could actually bring to our society with some of the decisions that are in the works today. So yes, we're watching what's going to happen with the decision on the Clean Power Plan and what we do with greenhouse gases and what's available to us under the Clean Air Act. But at the same time, EPA and other agencies are working very hard to make sure that we have other available tools to use and ready to go should this tool in some way be diminished in terms of our ability to regulate what we all know is a life-threatening pollutant. Carbon emissions is not just hurting our health, but it virtually is threatening the viability of our species. Let's get real, folks, here. Let's remind the Supreme Court what they're there to do. And I feel very confident that the actions we took were legal and sound and available to us. The challenge that we have is the Supreme Court decided to take it up when there was literally nothing at play or any discussion. So it's not a great sign that they decided to opine on this. We'll see where it goes. But we are not going to let the Supreme Court or any one decision stop us from doing the work that we know the American public want us to do.
Ty and I last summer, we did a couple great conversations looking at the 70s energy crisis. And we had at the time stagflation. It was a much different environment. But I think as we look to 2022, I think that we have this overall fear that people will be scared by what they see with inflation. And there's obviously very real inflation concerns, but that will keep the regular, the average voter, everyday Americans from pushing harder on climate action, which, as you've said over and over again, and we could not agree with more, we can't avoid that. Actually, electrification, decarbonization, this will help us fight inflationary pressures in the future. But I'm curious, from your standpoint, as we wrap up here, what do you think this broader inflation conversation could mean to environmental and climate action as we see this set of policies in 2022?
Well, there's a lot of things going on right now, Brock. And let me give you a little bit longer perspective because, I've been working on this since the 70s. And if I'm not discouraged, you guys better buck it up because we got to move forward. And I just think, for a long time, we were fighting the climate deniers who said climate change wasn't real. Now I don't hear that anymore. You can't really say that given what we're already seeing, the droughts we're seeing, the wildfires, the heat stress, the kind of hurricanes and tornadoes and other crazy storms that we're seeing. People know that things have changed. So they get that. The critical piece is that people don't usually make significant change if the only thing you tell them is they have to do it, right? I mean, if I've had 3 children, I have 4 grandchildren, you better entice them to do the right thing instead of whacking them and saying, you gotta, right? I didn't mean whack them physically, I mean push them, right? So you gotta be positive, you gotta be hopeful. What we have today is remarkable. What we have today is not sacrifice technology. These are beneficial to the American public in terms of lowering their costs today. I'm not asking anybody to drive an electric vehicle because it mopes along and it's going to cost you more money. It will save you an incredible amount of money, both in gas prices and maintenance, because it doesn't need either of those things, right? And it is an incredible car to drive. It's so higher performing than anything. So what we need to do is explain to people that we know we can't deny climate change. We know we have to address it. And the path to the future is one that builds us a better today, right? So let's stop this sacrifice frame. Let's start looking at the incredible opportunities we have today. And I see the private sector all in. We didn't think we could get to 100% electric vehicles by 2035. But General Motors said they could. Then guess what? Everybody else said. Ford Motor Company, General Motors, and all the other big ones actually wrote to the courts in defense of strong, clean car standards because they know they can win, right? So what we have to do is just get that framing, be creative, keep investing in new technologies, because with each new technology comes another pathway for hope, right? Another pathway for your future to be as bright as it possibly can be. So I don't think that I'm afraid of the future as much as I'm just anxious for the present, because I know there's challenges now. I know we're getting off of a terrible pandemic. And I know that there's inflation that's happening in challenges with oil and gas. The president knows it. He's taking every step he can to address this challenge, but it's not unique to the United States. It's worldwide. And we have to all get together and recognize that while this economic challenge is worldwide, so is the challenge of climate change. So let's face this economic challenge by building that clean energy future.
Well, Gina McCarthy, so happy that you're serving in the administration, and so happy that the administration has put so much of climate action in high in a high profile status. And it's been so wonderful to be able to talk to you about these critical issues. And thank you so much for joining us again on the Climate Pod.
Thank you, Brock. Thanks, Ty. It was really a great opportunity for me, and have a wonderful clean energy future.